There is a fifth dimension beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area we call the Twilight Zone. Bum bum bum! Hello, everybody! Thank you for the bits, Yoda! Hi! I was so excited. I really wanted to do a little dun, 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 like a little thank you. Thank you. Hello, Lickle Boo. Hi. Let me get the music going because I even got a little playlist. Let me know if I need to turn the music up or down. I wanted to dress for the occasion. Hold on, my button like snapped a little, but I can do a full stand up. I can do a stand up. Hold on. Hi, Bailey. Look. I've been wanting to do this costume for years now. I've wanted to do a Tower of Terror costume for a while, and this is actually an official doll from Disney World. I will talk about it later down the stream when we get to our talk about Disney. I have it like all the way in the back. You can't really tell what it is. But hello, everybody. Again, let me know if I need to turn audio up and down. How are you guys doing? Happy Friday. I am excited and ready to rock and roll and talk about the Twilight Zone. I have been so pumped about this stream for about a month now. Pretty much the moment I decided I was going to do this stream, I've been very, very, very excited about this. I had started this costume at the beginning of quarantine. Yay, so happy to have someone lurking. Yay. I'm so glad. Welcome to the squad, Lickle Boo. Also, before we start, I do have to give shout out to two people who just followed right before the stream. Jackie Plays and Rackbell316. Thank you both so much, and thank you also, Lickle Boo, for joining us too. We are going to dive on in. Let me boop. I've been very excited about this PowerPoint. You guys know I love making PowerPoints so much. I did do a lot of research on this. My primary piece of research came from, is the frame rate bad? Well, luckily it's a PowerPoint, so as long as you guys can hear me, that should be okay. But I did, wait, I should have just shown it in the other screen. Hold on. It may have just also been that particular thing. This book, Last Up, Twilight Zone, The Biography of Rod Serling by Joel Engel, was a good chunk of my research. Obviously, not everything came from that particular book. I didn't 100% agree with some of the author's conclusions, and I know some of his Rod Serling's family members didn't like everything. Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's right, okay. Didn't like everything he had to write, but it was a good chunk of information. Obviously, we're not going to put Rod Serling up on a complete pedestal, but he was a pretty amazing dude, so excuse me. I always have to put that, especially with people who are from older generations. Yay, getting to sleep, yay, new cat ears. Always happy to hear that, always happy for more Catwoman. But yeah, we are going to dive on in because I do have a good meaty chunk of history to go through, as well as also just kind of going through some of my all-time favorite episodes and talking to you guys about, like, what are your guys' favorite episodes? So we've got a lot to talk about. Before we start, however, the talk is going to pretty much focus on just the original Twilight Zone. We're not going to go into any of the reboots. I still have to watch the newest reboot. I haven't watched that yet. But and in terms of people involved in the Twilight Zone, obviously Rod Serling was not the only person writing for the show, but we're going to pretty much just focus on him. Just as a little sidebar before we move into everything. I tried to do my best to keep up my due diligence and making sure all my facts are right, so just a little introduction. So again, we're going to only talk about the original series, which was 5 seasons long. Rod Serling, person, the writer. We're going to do a huge deep dive into his personal history because his personal history is so intertwined in the way that the Twilight Zone was written, the way the messages that it, shows, all that jazz. It's so intricately important to understand who he was and his history before we can even talk about the show. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the legacy, the movie, very, very briefly, and and Disney, of course. Of course, we're going to talk about Disney. Yes, one of his big models was fuck drunk drivers, fuck hit and runs. You have to be responsible if you're driving. Also, forgot I have my little bell. This bell and my hat came from the actual Tower of Terror in Disney World. So actual merch. There's not a lot of Tower of Terror merch, and I try to get like my grubby little hands on whatever I can. And then we're at the end of it, we're going to end it with just a bunch of episode discussions, just talking about a bunch of our favorite episodes, just rambling on about all things Twilight Zone. I figure I should give you guys a little bit of an introduction. So, Rod Serling, obviously lots of text. This is a meaty chunk. I usually hate doing PowerPoint slides that are this chunky with text, but I underestimated how much research I did, and I didn't want to do 5 slides on just Rod Serling, so I tried my best. So I apologize that the text may be a little tiny, especially for people who are watching on mobile. Do apologize for that. I am going to re-upload this later on YouTube later on in the week, so it will live forever on YouTube. So Rod Serling, he was born December 25th, 1924. Hell yeah, Christmas baby. And died June 28th, 1975. So he was 51. Well, he was going to be 51 that year. Died very, very young. That plays a lot into his story. He was Jewish, but he didn't like to advertise that he was Jewish. He wasn't really big into advertising that because obviously there was a lot of anti-Semitism at the time, so he was always kind of a little bit nervous about being alienated. He was very short. He was 5'4", so I have a full 5 inches on Rod Serling. I'm 5'9". That was something that he also did struggle with, was his height. He was always kind of a little self-conscious of that. If anybody ever, was like, oh, you're so much shorter than on TV, he kind of got a little like, yeah, like, he did not like that at all. I mean, can you blame the man? And he was a heavy cigarette user. Like, the man smoked like 20 packs a day sort of thing. I mean, obviously that's part of the time period. Yes, I am a giant. Not as much of a giant of the Resident Evil vampire lady, but compared to Rod Serling, I would definitely be. I would be the right proportions for that, especially if I wore heels. He also did like a lot of, towards the end of his life, he dyed his hair a lot, especially for TV, for doing the Twilight Zone. He was always very self-conscious about aging. That's why his hair is always super jet black, especially in later episodes of the series. You're just like, that's a lot of hair dye. And he would like keep on this heavy, TV makeup to go home because he was just like, I don't want to age. Can you blame him? So he was also convinced that he was gonna die young. What ended up killing him was he had a heart attack and he was fine. And a couple years later, he had another mild heart attack, like moving some luggage for the family on vacation. And so they were like, oh, we're just gonna do very basic bypass surgery, totally fine, gonna wake up, totally normal, everything's cool. And then at the second that they sewed him up, he had another heart attack, and in the attempt to reopen him up, get the blockage, he passed out on the table in that second attack. So that, third attack total, but second in a row. So that was pretty dang unfortunate. He also was a paratrooper in World War II, specifically 1944. He fought against the Japanese on, that particular side. He was actually a little disappointed. He was quoted as being really disappointed that he didn't go get to fight Hitler. He was one of those guys that signed up to fight Hitler. He despised Hitler, obviously not just because he was Jewish, but he hated people who were prejudiced, which we're going to dive really, again, is a huge theme of the Twilight Zone, is punishing people who are prejudiced, people who, you know, obviously he used metaphors like, oh, they hated on him because he was an alien, but like, we all know he was like, fuck racists. And they did actually do an episode where a former SS officer visits the death camp that he was the head of and is put on trial by the souls of all the Jewish people that he had killed, all the people he had killed in that death camp. And at the end of the episode, they said, sorry, this is going to be a lot of spoilers for Twilight Zone episodes too. At the end of the episode, they said, we do not choose to kill you because that would be too easy. We're going to render you permanently insane because that is a much worse fate. And I'm like, damn. Rod Serling was not playing around with that episode. And he wanted to do things that were very realistic and things that were very to the times, but constantly was being turned down. So part of what worked with the Twilight and what got the Twilight Zone started was because it was fiction, you know, sci-fi and horror. I love that episode too. I don't think I put it in one of my favorites. I may have to double check some of my favorites. Because I put the episode names down and I'm like, wait a second, which episode was that again? So I may have to double check some things. You guys get to see my compiler screen, so you get to see my shame. Alright, so he did grow up on classic black and white monster movies like the old Bela Lugosi Dracula, the original Frankenstein, Godzilla, not necessarily Godzilla, but King Kong. He was like 9 years old, 10 years old when those movies were coming out, and he loved horror. He loved to like kind of scare people. So that was there were little snippets and stories in the book about that. His two biggest literary influences were Arthur Miller, you know, The Crucible, pretty obvious, and Ernest Hemingway, which Ernest Hemingway is actually one of my favorite writers too. Rod was kind of always described as kind of like the manly man's man, you know, much like Ernest Hemingway. He also really loved Death of a Salesman. He thought it was like one of the greatest literary pieces. He wanted to make something like that. And Rod Serling got really lucky because the Red Scare was going on, kind of right around when he was doing the Twilight Zone. So he got real lucky that he didn't get blacklisted or red listed in his case. He got real lucky. He's like, yeah, it's fiction, you guys. It's cool. He was an insomniac, so he, you know, stayed up a lot, did a lot of writing that way, and a lot of stuff like Lovecraft and Ray Bradbury inspired the Twilight Zone. He actually had a weird history with Ray Bradbury. There were moments when they would be like the best of friends, and then other moments Ray Bradbury would turn around and accuse Rod Serling of stealing his ideas and copywriting his ideas for the show. And Rod would be like, Rod never admitted to it. He just constantly was like, what? So you're the only person who's allowed to write a story about someone being nostalgic and wanting to go back to the past via an amusement park ride? Really, dude? You own nostalgia? Like, but then then a year or so later, they'd be like the best of friends again. Then the cycle would repeat. So they were constantly in that weird kind of cycle together. He did won 6 Emmys over the course of his life, you know, primarily for the Twilight Zone. He did also feel kind of trapped, though, by the Twilight Zone fame, and he was very overworked. You know, you're churning out multiple episodes a week, essentially, and he just kind of, again, he was typecast. You're the Twilight Zone guy. So when the Twilight Zone ended, he really struggled with finding work after that, and he clashed with other people who he wrote for, and I mean, towards the end of his life, he realized, oh, this is gonna make some money, so he would go on like game shows and like do his little Twilight Zone shtick. So he's like, I feel trapped by it, but it does put some extra bank and money in my bank, so. But he was also very kind and polite to fans. There's lots of stories of him being out to dinner with his family and friends, and people and the restaurant would come up to him, and he was always very polite and would talk to them and take the pictures, sign the autographs, and he made sure that every single person who wanted to talk to him in that restaurant talked to him before he would continue, like while his meal is going cold, because he's like, I want to make sure everybody's taken care of, so then I can go back to enjoying my meal. Obviously, the people he was with to have dinner with weren't always happy about that, but I think that's, just kind of testament for just being a solid dude, because he could have very easily been like, dude, I'm busy, I'm eating, but it was very nice. He wrote hundreds of TV scripts before and after the Twilight Zone, and also for radio. This is not the only thing he did. Obviously, we're going to pretty much just be talking about the Twilight Zone, but the Twilight Zone wasn't the only thing he did. Obviously, he wanted to do more past it, but this is kind of what has made him immortal in a way. Yeah, he was actually like a pretty solid dude. I will say there are conflicting statements about how he felt about gay people. Some people were like, he didn't like them. Other people were like, no, he actually was pretty chill and he had plenty of gay friends. So like those statements were kind of back and forth. And I'm like, he's also a person very much against prejudice. So I'm like, I'm inclined to believe the people his close friends who were like, no, he actually was pretty chill. He was a huge civil rights advocate and donor, gave tons of money to civil rights causes. You remember, this is around also the time Martin Luther King Jr., this is like the civil right, he was around for the civil rights stuff. I'm just, look at me, the white lady, just like totally trivializing it, but he was around for Martin Luther King Jr., Civil Rights Act, that's, all of that, and he did actually get to meet Martin Luther King Jr. He said it was one of the best things ever. So he gave a lot of his money for that and was super supportive of civil rights. And it's pretty obvious in his work that he's like very anti-racism. He also wrote the original script drafts for the Planet of the Apes movie. Obviously, they didn't use his script for the movie. They completely changed a lot. It wasn't what what the filmmakers really wanted to do. However, he was still given some money for doing the early script drafts, since they built essentially off of his scripts, and he was credited for it. So that's kind of wild, which when you think about Planet of the Apes is kind of like, it's a very Twilight Zone vein. Obviously, Rod Serling didn't write the original novel, but he really wanted to write the script for that movie really bad. And he just, something that's very obvious about from people who knew him, they talked a lot about how he kind of judged himself more on his failures than his successes. He was never, he was kind of one of those tragic artists that never really got to understand how impactful and important the Twilight Zone was, because he had died, and it wasn't until after his death that it became so impactful and so important. Hey girls, thank you so much for the song! Music's a little loud? Okay, let me turn that down. I know some of the music I have is like a little more upbeat and others are like not. So there we go, I think that's a little bit better. But thank you, girls! Hey, ding ding! Thank you for the subs! I love you, my dude. Yeah, some of it's loud, some of it's soft. I did not mix it well. I just threw songs that fit the vibe. Womp womp womp, my bad. And I don't have my headphones in, so I have no idea what songs you're playing. So I apologize about that. Ding ding, I'm doing good. I'm in my costume. I should tell you guys, I had an accident earlier. So in the back, you can't see it, I have my backdrop, which are just two stands, like two poles, and then I've got another pole on top, and it's got my backdrop. And my backdrop is kind of long. It's, designed so you can use it laying on the ground. It was down, and I was filming some TikToks, and I have a wood floor. And, I was doing a TikTok where I jumped, like I did a little, like a squat. A jump into a squat, and I slipped. Yep, I landed on the backdrop, bottom of the backdrop, and I slid on the wood floor. I got it on a TikTok. I got it on the TikTok. Oh, we got squats to do. Okay. in a freaking skirt. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm like a little nervous right now. I'm not standing well. I'm like a little trippy because I'm a little shaken, and I fell. And okay, I should warn you. Thank you for contributing to this sexy slasher cosplay challenge. And I slipped. And I'm not a flexible human being. I can't touch my toes. Tell you what, I sure did a split. I sure did a split. I was in so much pain. Hey RJ, thank you RJ, thank you Gurus for contributing your channel points to the sexy slasher cosplay challenge. It hurt. Like, I did a full split, and I literally sat there on the floor for 30 seconds in a daze, unsure of what had happened. But yeah, it's gonna go on my TikTok at some point. I got a little bit of it on TikTok. It was, like, I took out the backdrop. It was pretty bad. Thank you for the puns, RJ. I appreciate it. I appreciate you punning my pain. Okay. So the last of this slide about Rod Serling. Really the big thing that we can pull from his life and from his history is that he was the kind of person that wrote what he knew. He was very uncomfortable writing outside of what he knew. He didn't really he didn't really write women characters well, and that was something that he knew. There was actually an episode about a woman in a bus stop essentially finding her doppelganger, that was written by a female writer, and Rod Serling at the beginning of the episode, he admitted and said in the beginning of the episode, I don't write women well, so I had a woman writer come on, and this is her name, and this is the story that she wrote. Here we go. And I thought that was pretty damn rad. A lot, obviously huge, even though he didn't write every single episode of the Twilight Zone, they still fit in line with his style of writing and his ideas and things like that. A lot of his own personal morals, ideals, opinions, stuff like that, Drunk driving sucks. Machines are scary. Racism is bad, like things like that. Be careful. He also was, what's so ironic for someone who was very afraid of, not afraid, but like very nervous about growing old, dyeing his hair, taking on the makeup. He had a lot of stories about not being vain and not being too obsessed with your own personal, appearance. A lot of stories punishing people who had those kinds of ideals, punishing the greedy, just a lot of stuff like that. It's, good morals hidden under things that are genuinely terrifying. Okay. And then, so these were 2 quotes pulled from him. Happen to think that singularly the worst aspect of our time is prejudice. It is from this evil that all other evils grow and multiply. Also, this is like a stunning portrait of him. I love this portrait of him. Yeah, the facial surgery, we're going to talk about that episode. Number 12 looks just like you. That's one of my all-time favorite episodes. And also the Eye of the Beholder, that's another one that I love too. But yeah, he, again, very much against prejudice, very, very much against that. He, again, was a huge into giving his money to civil rights activists. All around these particular quotes, this is one of the main things of the Twilight Zone. Obviously, there's lots of others, but, remember this man lived through, the civil rights and the Red Scare. He lived through a lot of stuff like that. It would make sense that these are the sorts of ideals that morals that he would want to focus on in his show. And part of what makes a good horror story a good horror story is that it speaks specifically to the time. There's a reason why Frankenstein by Mary Shelley was so terrifying when it first came out. That was the time period, of enlightenment. Science is mixing with religion, so, therefore you get Frankenstein's monster was that much terrifying. It was timely. There's a reason why Get Out, you fast forward why Get Out was so terrifying when it first came out, because it's so timely. Good horror plays upon the fears of our society. That's why a lot of our current modern horror is a lot of kind of trippy, hallucinogenic, losing control of your own mind, because there's so much that we can't control. And obviously why Black Mirror is so big, because you know, it's technology horror, things like that. Black Mirror, there are two good enough. If you like the Twilight Zone and you've already seen every single Twilight Zone episode out there, I have watched through all Black Mirror and I thought it was pretty good. Obviously I didn't think it was as good as the Twilight Zone, and it doesn't quite hit the morals. It's not as strong with its morals as the Twilight Zone is, which I think is a bit in of Black Mirror's detriment, is that most of the morals they have are be too careful with technology going too far, which I feel like isn't enough, because whenever Rod Serling did episodes that focused on technology going too far, technology being the problem, he always kind of took it an extra step further. Instead of just an episode about a guy who was all upset because he looked at his phone on a social media app on his phone, and then that caused like him to have a crash and like lose his fiance, Rod Serling would do episodes where like a nerdy scientist becomes devoted and like attached to this femme fatale of a computer that like obsesses over, like he takes it to like a different level. Again, Black Mirror's good. Another good series on Netflix that if you like the Twilight Zone, you might like are 2 Cents Horror Stories. Those are far more traditional horror, whereas Twilight Zone's like much more sci-fi horror. But 2 Cents Horror Stories is very good too on Netflix. A couple of those episodes really freaked me the hell out, so those are good. But so yeah, the creation of the Twilight Zone. Also, this is another one of my favorite episodes too. I love this episode. The makeup in this episode is cool. Sorry, I had to take a sip of my drink. So the very first episode of the Twilight Zone aired October 2nd, 1959. The show ran for 5 seasons, running until 1964. By the end of the show, pretty much everybody, Rod Serling included, was pretty much done with it. So the very last episode of the entire series is arguably like the worst episode. This kid, the one where Earth got knocked off its orbit. Yeah, like it's just like, oh, that one's totally messed up too. That's the one where where it's getting hotter and hotter, right? And then it's getting, the temperature's getting hotter and hotter, and they're all going into like heat stroke. And it follows a woman and her, hello, Grumps the Gamer. This is actually, it's got my lipstick all over it. This is actually the poison apple mug from the Disney store, because I love the poison apple from this side. It looks bloody. I figured I should use a funky Disney cup, a fun Disney cup, because I'm wearing a Disney Tower of Terror costume. I love this mug. It's one of my favorite mugs of all time. I tragically do not own a Twilight Zone mug, and that is a tragedy that I need to fix at some point. So with the Twilight, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, we're talking about the one that knocks out Earth's orbit, and if you've never seen it, they do at the parks, and there are a few that you can find through eBay. I have my eye on 1 or 2 on eBay, and I'm just like, mighty need. They do at the parks. It's just, I was probably gonna buy one. I was supposed to go to Disney last year, but obviously that didn't happen. Usually I go to Disney every 2 years, and every time I go to Disney, I buy at least $100 to $200 worth of stuff at the Twilight Zone gift shop, and that like fuels me for the next 2 years. Disney! But yeah, we are going to talk about the Disney ride. Don't you worry, we are going to talk about the Disney ride. I didn't just dress up in this outfit because I looked cute and because I made it. But with the initial creation of the show, going back on topic, it did struggle initially to be picked up by sponsors. A lot of sponsors were kind of worried that like, oh, are we sure our butter brand should be connected to McCarthy? You know, should be connected to anti-communist, like, you know, McCarthyism, or like, it's just like all, they were so worried about the messages at first, and then of course when the episode started rolling and people fell in love with the show, then they were clamoring for sponsors. It got like passed up multiple times. Thank you, Yoda. I appreciate it. I couldn't wear fake eyelashes today because my eyes were acting up and being wonky, but that's okay. But yeah, a lot of the Twilight Zone, again, going back to 2 Cents Horror Stories on Netflix, is kind of fits that 2 sentence horror story type format. It's if this happened, then this, and then it kind of further elaborates. That's why it works so well in like smaller, like 30-minute increments, because they are kind of like 2 sentence horror stories. You know, what if this talking doll tried to kill you and it pushed you down the stairs? Like, you know, they're kind of very simplistic, basic ideas, but were so unique and so wonderfully done. Again, Rod was not the only writer, but he still maintained control. He had a very loose editing style. He specifically chose his writers because he knew that they were good writers, and he felt like, oh, I don't want to mess with their vision too much. I trust them. This already works very well with what I like. I don't want to, you know, micromanage the shit out of them. And he did do a show after the Twilight Zone. I believe it's like called Night Hour or something like that. And his boss was like, just would consistently change his scripts to the point where Rod's like, I feel like this has been edited so many times that's not even the script that I wrote. So he was a very laid back editor and kind of boss. Alright, so then talking about the impact. Speaking of creepy talking dolls, so it's no secret that the Twilight Zone revolutionized, you know, sci-fi and horror writing. So many of the tropes and stories in the Twilight Zone are reused today, you know, from Simpsons Treehouse of Horror to, you know, traditional actual horror story, you know, like full horror stories. Night Gallery, that's what it was. I was blanking on the name. Night Gallery, that was the show that he worked on that he had the boss that he hated. You know, a lot of these themes are so used today. You can argue, yeah, this is like the original Chucky. Obviously, there have always been stories of creepy dolls, possessed dolls, haunted dolls, but, you know, watching this episode, Talking Tina was her name. You look at it and you're like, damn, that's Chucky. My hormone limit was, are you afraid of the dark? Yeah, like, what is nice about the Twilight Zone is if you aren't into horror, you can't really handle horror, you know, you can still enjoy it, because there are some episodes that definitely lean more towards sci-fi, and then there are others that lean more towards horror, like Talking Tina. I think there was a Proto Freddy. I know what you're talking about. I can't quite place my brain on it. These were not like our traditional like 20 episodes a season kind of shows. These were like 30 episodes, you know, per season. There were a lot of episodes per season. And obviously there have been several reboots, but nothing really quite captured the original. Obviously, I still haven't seen the most recent reboot. I do think that Jordan Peele is the perfect person to take on Rod Serling's mantle. I feel like he is a perfect writer for that. I still have to watch it. It's on my watch list. Part of what I was, yeah, I'm very, it's on my list. Obviously, a ton of crap came out this month, so I'm like, oh, I gotta get caught up on Disenchanted. I still gotta get caught up on Sabrina. I still gotta get caught up on, I gotta finally watch Ratchet. Oh crap, that really crappy Winx, you know, reboot came out. I guess I gotta watch that. Like, too many dang shows I need to watch. But yeah, again, I really only wanted to focus on kind of the original tonight. We're going to touch briefly on the movie. The only reason I wanted to touch on the movie, we're not going to go super deep into like the whole dang story. I feel like I have to, Yoda. As someone who grew up on the original, if I'm going to be critical of it and hate on it, I need to know exactly why. I need to see it with my own stupid little eyes and then wash my eyeballs with bleach. I need to be upset with my own eyes. But so the Twilight Zone movie, Serling actually Rod Serling really did want to do a movie. He wrote several scripts and proposed it several times, but never got around to happening when he was alive, which is tragic. His original idea was to do 3 segments. I have that like down on the list. Three segments that were, you know, maybe loosely interwoven, but not really. The one that he was the story that he was the really most excited about was this story about a rich old blind woman who was just mean and evil, and she wanted to see. She was born blind. Yeah, please your own eyes. I plucked them out and discussed what you're forced to watch. Sounds like the conclusion. Yeah, pretty much. But so the story of this one that he really wanted to put into a movie was the story of a blind woman. She was rich, old, and she had never seen before. So she came across this surgery that if she paid a person money, they gave her their eyes, she would have pretty much like a day. She would have a day to see through that person's eyes and soak up all of visual memories needed for the rest of her life. And which is just like so disturbing. And he really wanted to get this movie done, but it never happened while he was alive. Happened in 1983. It, kind of followed his original thought was to have multiple segments, but things happened, and yes, as you can see, Steven Spielberg was a producer, while John Landis written, directed, produced, and so they had multiple segments, directors involved, and eventually they initially wanted to make it kind of interwoven, but they had a lot of problems with filming that just didn't let that happen. So part of what made the movie not as good is the fact that they couldn't interweave all of these stories together, which at some point you're like, okay, this is a movie or a nostalgia, you should have just watched the original Twilight Zone. And a lot of the stories in the movie were just reshoots or reboots in a way of the original episodes of the show. So it's like, wait, we've seen this before. Rod Serling already nailed that with William Shatner. Like, come on. So I think if we had actually gotten the Twilight Zone movie in Rod's original vision, I think things would have been definitely a lot different. So this movie did get listed as being a cursed film. I won't go totally into that history of that. If you really want to look into the history of that, I really recommend that you check out the documentary series called Cursed Films on Shudder. It's a mini documentary series, about an hour per episode, and each episode goes over a cursed film. So like they did The Exorcist for one film, they talked about The Crow in another episode, and of course they moved on to this one mainly because there was a stunt helicopter crash that killed 2 children and one of the head actors, Vic Morrow. Also Dan Aykroyd was in this movie, kind of wild. But yeah, Vic Morrow, what had happened with that accident was, the whole story was, again, a very, racism is bad, and they were punishing a really racist dude by forcing him to live through all of these tragic historical events, that were that started with racism and prejudice in history. And they were kind of already breaking union laws. There were only a certain amount of time, amount of length that you can have a child working essentially on set, and you couldn't have them working past a certain time. So they broke the rules, and they were trying to film this night sequence because they were just really running behind on time. They're trying to film this night sequence with all these explosions and stuff, and with Vic Morrow's character running, holding these 2 Vietnamese children, and there was an accident with the helicopter, killed both of them, all 3 of them. Beyond tragic, honestly. One thing I will say about that series is it doesn't glamorize the cursed nature of these films. At the end of every episode, as they're interviewing people who actually worked on these movies, they're like, no, it's actually really disrespectful for you to call this movie cursed because people died. There are people in this film who were dead. There were actual tragedies and accidents that happened, and to just call it cursed is just kind of disrespectful to their memory. So that's why I put cursed in very loose letters. That's kind of really what made that movie famous. We all forgot that Steven Spielberg was involved, that Dan Aykroyd is involved. All we can remember of it is that it was cursed, and that Vic Morrow and 2 children died. So tragic. But it was worth mentioning for this talk just because it was something that the movie was something that Rod Serling really, really wanted to have happen, and it's just unfortunate that it couldn't happen the way that he wanted and that it had such a tragic accident involved. But now we get to talk about the really fun portion, the Tower of Terror! We get to talk about the Tower of Terror! So, I know it's the bottom bulletin, but I'm going to talk about the bottom bulletin first, which is my personal story with the Tower of Terror. The Tower of Terror was how I had discovered the Twilight Zone. When I was a kid, I was very lucky, and I got to go to Disney a lot as a kid because my dad works in insurance, and about every year, at least, pre-corona, there would be a big insurance conference in Orlando, really close to the parks. So when we actually did this this was actually my last Disney trip too. I was like, hey, I know I'm 23, but can I just crash in your hotel room and go to the parks and because he's for him it's a work trip, so he gets to go to the hotel room. The hotel is free, his flight's free, so I'm like, my mom and I were like, so if we pay for our plane tickets, can we crash in your hotel room? So it was so Disney World has always kind of been a family thing, even though my parents are so not into they're not really into Disney, but my dad and my mom hates the rides. The Tower of Terror and the Teacup ride are the only rides that my mom won't do. They're the only rides that my mom will. I almost got her Tower of Terror once, but Tower of Terror was me and my dad's personal thing. Because it's also right next to the Rock and Roller Coaster, the Aerosmith one. So we would go back and forth between the two rides as a kid. And I remember being totally freaked out and scared of the opening show. And my dad would put me on his shoulders so that way I could see the TV screen in the pre-show. Which if you've never been on the Tower of Terror ride, I'm very sorry. But it's definitely worth... yeah, it's valid. Never riding it again. Totally valid. It's definitely worth going onto YouTube and checking out a video clip of just a walkthrough, because this is obviously the outside, and I can't see what that link is. I'll take a look at that later. This is obviously the outside. This is one of the inside waiting areas. You get to see the lobby of the hotel. And then they usher you into a pre-show room where they do it's irrelevant meme, awesome. Where they play a little clip, which we're gonna talk about that. And they have you in a fake library, and then they usher you down into the basement of the ride where it takes you into the elevator and does the rest of the ride. It's a pretty rough ride. I believe there's about somewhere between 5 and 10 different drop sequences. Yeah, no, there's 5 different elevator shafts and about 10 or so different drop sequences in terms of felt like The Shining the ride. Yeah, because you've got at the bottom here this empty hallway. That's one of the sequences you see right before the big drop. And then, obviously the shutters open out and that disorients the heck out of you, and they do an actual thing where they have the cart travel through the Twilight Zone, because we all know the opening of the later episodes of the openings of the Twilight Zone has, the door floating in space, the eyeball, the equation. The ride cart actually pushes you through a dark space and has those things floating by you, so if you feel like you're going through the opening, and they do this light, it's just so damn cool. I freaking love this ride. Can you tell it's my favorite Disney ride? But it's a very special ride to me because it's something that was special to me and my dad. It was something that it was our thing. He also grew up watching the Twilight Zone and was traumatized. Also, yeah, nice episode of Family Matters. My dad was traumatized by the Twilight Zone. There was one specific episode that actually is one of my favorite episodes. I will point it out to you, that traumatized my father. This man is in his 60s. If you talk to him and you go, oh, this episode, or you reference that episode, his eyes will just the man is still upset by it. I watched that episode for the first time with him, and he just was so tense the entire time. And I'm like, it can't get you, Dad. And he's like, I know, but So there's something to be said about, something that came out 60 years, less than, 60 years ago that can still terrorize someone. So the Tower of Terror is very special to me. Obviously, I really want to cosplay it. I do have dreams next year to make another Tower of Terror costume, but instead make it an original design, something that I can compete in for, if we ever get to have in-person costume competitions again. But yeah, I love the overall aesthetic of the ride. I love just listening. Like, while I was doing research for this, I ended up going through the research specifically of this ride. I was listening to videos and stuff, and I like almost started to cry. Like, it just hits me. Yes, the bellhop. That's actually the most. Yeah, you would know this, girls. It's like the most requested place to work at in Hollywood studios. Although now I think the Star Wars area would be much more wanted. But what is great is it's the only place in Disney where staff members aren't required to smile all the time. That's why people like to work there. I love the bellhop outfits. Wait, I was like, where's my logo? There's my logo. Star Wars. But I'm a huge sucker for the Tower of Terror and the Twilight Zone. I try to get my grubby little hands on every single merchandise I can get. Tragically, you cannot get any merch for it on the website. So if you ever need to figure out what to get me for my birthday or Christmas, my birthday is June 16th, by the way, Tower of Terror merch. I am serious. I will cry. I will legitimately cry. But anyway, going into the now enough about me and my sad, tragic backstory about the Tower of Terror and the Twilight Zone and my family. I didn't even bought myself Tower of Terror ears to wear last year. But anyway, so the original Tower, we're going to talk specifically about the original Tower of Terror ride, which opened up July 1994, year before I was born, in Walt Disney World. Obviously, they recreated it and put it in, like, Disneyland Paris has one. Disneyland California used to have one. I'm still pissed about that. I know everybody always cares about the Haunted Mansion, but I'm like, but Tower of Terror is right freaking there. I will literally riot if they ever take down the Tower of Terror in Walt Disney World. I will just, like, coronavirus or not, I will be beating down the mouse's door. Just knock on wood. So it's the second tallest attraction in Florida. Mount Everest is the tallest, just barely. The last time I got to go there, I actually had a view of the Tower of Terror from my hotel room, which just made me so happy. So happy. My brother got a hella dope keychains when we were young. Got old-fashioned TV. Nice! Play the tune. Oh, I want that! I love it. I do kind of kick myself. I didn't get the light up Disney ears that say Twilight Zone on it, and like they can sync to the phantasmic lights, and they've got Mickey swirling through the Twilight Zone. I just want more Twilight Zone merch. I actually have a framed art print that I bought last time I was in Disney World of one of the bellhops being all creepy in front of an elevator, so that makes me happy, at least that's hanging up in my house. But so, in the pre-show, they essentially wanted to recreate the opening of a Twilight Zone episode, having Rod narrate and then showing the people getting into the elevator amidst the glitz and glam, the Hollywood style, like all the original opening. Wait, I won't pull up the original opening, but and then have the 5 people get into the elevator, the ghosts that you see, and then the lightning strikes, and it shows, sets up the story. Obviously, he had passed away. He had been dead for like 20 years. So Carol Serling, his wife, assisted with casting a voice actor. She sat through and went through all of the men that had auditioned, and they chose a man by the name of Mark Silverman. It's obvious when you watch it now, you're like, oh, I can tell that that's different. But he does have a very spot on impersonation. It's the closest Rod Serling you're ever gonna get, because Rod Serling had a very unique, like, way of speaking and voice, and this guy Mark Silverman, it's like it's like his pitch is just a touch higher, but he does have the right cadence of speaking. and they managed to digitally reconstruct and take archival footage from the episode It's a Good Life and plop him in front of the elevator sequence. So it's so cool, the technology that goes into it. And there are, in the pre-show area room that you wait in, there are lots of little just nods to Twilight Zone episodes. There's the fortune teller that you see in one episode. There's a poster that references an orchestra poster that references It's a Good Life. There's a letter on a desk that's signed from Rod Serling. So little things like that are just really nice if you know the Twilight Zone. There's a book that's pulled out, that's the books all have like titles of Twilight Zone episodes, just really cool stuff like that. And it was there is a movie, a straight to VHS movie based on the ride, made for TV. They have a DVD copy of it on the Disney Store, and a girl was very tempted to buy it and watch it. I know it's probably not great, but I still want to watch it because the Haunted Mansion gets all the cool stuff, and I feel like I need something. And what is kind of notorious and creepy about it is that there were several accidents. There were several accidents involved when they were constructing this. Oh damn, Yoda, you saw it when it dropped. Nice. There was a sinkhole in 1992, which caused them, a minor sinkhole, which caused them to have to slightly shift the site of the ride itself. There was an earthquake that happened during construction, and there were several lightning strikes that happened during construction, which is poignant to the fact that the whole ride the whole event of the ride starts with a lightning strike. And it's just very common now. Like, there's plenty of footage out there. While I was doing research, I stumbled upon tons of YouTube footage of and photos of actual lightning still continuously striking that ride, because again, it is the second tallest attraction in the Walt Disney and across all of the Walt Disney World parks. Freaking wild. But yeah, it felt very worth noting, this ride, not just because I decided to cosplay from it, but just it felt important to talk about this ride today. We're gonna dive, which now we get to move into the fun part of the show. The stream, so to speak. My lipstick is all over my mug, and that is so unfortunate. We could talk about my favorite episodes. Now, I did put a little disclaimer. I love every episode. These are just like my top picks. If you're like forced to put a gun to my head, these are just some of my top picks. I love every episode. Oh, we got a dab? I might lose my hat. Dab. Twilight Zone dab. Oh. So I sectioned them off by seasons. I have to... Hold on. I did section them off by seasons, just so that way we could kind of give each one a moment here. Let me just take a look at everything. Okay, so Shadow Play was the first one that I put. This is season 1. That's one on the left is season 1, one on the right is season 2. So Shadow Play, that's this is, to me, you can kind of sort of pick up what I personally like. I tend to lean more towards preferring the true horror stories and less the really like sci-fi alien ones. Shadow Play was an episode, again, if you don't want spoilers, sorry. Shadow Play was an episode where a man is waiting on death row, and he insists that he has been through it several times and that he is innocent. He did not commit the crime. He doesn't even really know what crime he committed. And he's essentially stuck in a time loop. And at the end of the time loop, he is sentenced to the electric chair. And he's just like, I'm stuck in this time loop. And I'm always a sucker for time loop stories. And in my belief, it's definitely a special brand of hell or purgatory or dream world, or shitty dream. It's a really cool one, and just an interesting, the idea of a time loop. Yeah, worst Groundhog Day ever. Remind you, this is before Groundhog's Day, before Happy Death Day, I'm sure there were other time loop stories, but, you know, this kind of felt, for its time, it was very unique and very different. I mean, now if they were to do that episode, there would have to be somebody making a Groundhog Day joke, you know? Look at Happy Death Day. They do make a Groundhog Day joke in Happy Death Day because of that. So, not every episode I really can talk super in depth on. Obsolete Man was one that was kind of interesting and haunting. That was one where you can really tell Rod Serling's like, I'm making a point here. If you've never seen, I'm gonna just, you know, very brief go throughs. If you've never seen these episodes, Obsolete Man is a futuristic society. Everyone in that society has to have a purpose. They have to have a purpose, and if you don't have a purpose, you're dead. They just kill you. So, Burgess Meredith, yeah, Burgess Meredith, fucking classic. They essentially, you know, there's an older man who is a carpenter, but like it's a skill that's considered obsolete. So he is sentenced to death, and they go through this whole episode about, you know, and just talking about worth in a society. Just because what I can do isn't seen as worthy or as obsolete doesn't mean I'm any less of a person, or just because I don't have an obvious benefit to society doesn't mean I shouldn't live. And the person who is essentially, you know, tasked to kill the old man, he doesn't do it, and he is then rendered obsolete and is carried out, you know, and just the cycle continues. And I don't know, as someone in my mid-20s who's still unsure about their life, that one hit home, and I was like, man, ouch. Oof. Oof. Oh, I forgot to say thank you so much for the host, RJ Para. I just noticed that. Like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I just noticed that notification. Thank you for the host. I don't have my headset on, so I'm not getting the sound notifications. I'm really sorry. I sip my drink in shame. Again, there's not too much to say about that, because it is pretty damn obvious in the morals about, yes, thank you, Grumps the Gamer, shame me. Shame! I don't have a shame, I have a shame. 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 It's like the shame bell in Game of Thrones. Talk about something that faded from the public eye. Another episode I liked out of season 1 was Purple Testament. This one was kind of wild. He didn't really get like religious with his episodes. The most religious he got was one that I actually do have in here, and it was that I'll talk about later. But he did have things that felt spiritual or in line with It's a Wonderful Life, which, mind you, It's a Wonderful Life, the original story had been out when the Twilight Zone was going on. So, you know, you can think of the Twilight Zone as a, you know, freakier It's a Wonderful Life. It's very gothic. Both of them are very gothic, whereas It's a Wonderful Life is like gothic. It's not horror, but it's dark. It's got its dark gothic moments, and Twilight Zone has some levels of gothic to it. There's like multiple episodes that follow the It's a Wonderful Life. You know, if my life was different, or if I was never born, or if I did, you know, or if I was dead. Like, there's plenty of episodes like that, which are a little on the gothic side. But this still falls more under sci-fi and horror, just on the gothic side of sci-fi and horror. And take a shot every time I say gothic, I swear to God. But Purple Testament was a little bit different. It's a bunch of soldiers, World War II, I believe, soldiers. Again, I stupidly did not rewatch all of these episodes today. I should have been doing that beforehand. Where a soldier, sees a purple shine on another soldier's face, and then the next day they die. So he's like, kind of like, he's burdened with this ability to predict who's gonna live, who's gonna die. And the episode, and you know, everyone's like calling him crazy, like closest friend is calling him crazy, and other people are like, oh my god, am I? Like, they're like, you know, like, oh, the rumors are going around that you can do this. And the episode ends with him looking at himself in the mirror, and he sees the purple shine on his face, and he's just like, shit. And, you know, there's certainly a level of, you know, fate, talk about fate, you know, if you knew that you were going to die, or you knew this person was going to die, you know, could you or would you be able to stop that? Well, you know, how, you know, having that kind of knowledge is more of a burden than it is a, you know, blessing, how it's just very haunting to know that it's better to not know. And mind you, Rod Serling is a veteran of World War II. He suffered from very violent PTSD flashbacks. His company had a very low survival rate. Like, they came out of it with less than half of the dudes. He saw some shit. Like, he had violent PTSD flashbacks, like violent ones. And that was part of why he was such an insomniac too later in life. It's, you know, just not healthy. So this definitely felt like him kind of talking about that sort of experiences. The what if someone knew? What if you knew? It just is its own level of haunting. It's, you know, it's frightening when you think about it, and it's a concept again that, you know, knowing someone's gonna die, it's, you know, it's not the first time it's been used, but certainly not the last. And it's just a lot of these sorts of episodes kind of either created or just kind of honed and sharpened a lot of sci-fi and horror tropes that we know and see a lot of today. Which is why the Twilight Zone is so damn timely. Like, so damn timely. The morals, just everything about it is so damn good. Again, I'm not hating on every single episode. I'm sure after this, you know, after this discussion is over, I'm gonna be like, oh, I should have talked about this episode. I should have talked about that episode. You know, because I love every episode. The last one out of season 1 I wanted to point out was Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. And that's very classic, very classic. Just, you know, usual white picket fence, suburban neighborhood, power goes out. And they're like, holy shit, the commies are getting us, the end of the world, oh my god. And fitting the time period, and so everybody just kind of starts to turn on each other. And they were, at the beginning of the episode, acting like, oh, we're so civilized, we're so awesome, we're so much better than other people, nah. And they all kind of end up attacking this one guy who's the only person in the entire street that has a bomb shelter. So they all just kind of go a little nuts, get a little selfish, and that's, again, fair, and it's very timely. And the episode ends with, oh, turns out that it was a bunch of aliens came and turned off the power just to see what would happen and just to kind of watch society collapse. And they're like, time to move on to the next street, time to keep on going, time to destroy civilization by just making them tear each other apart. How damn easy it is as us, you know, as human beings, for us to just tear each other apart. So very, very damn poignant, I'd say. Humans deserve it. Yep, Simpsons did it. Like, again, a lot of these episodes, you're gonna be like, oh, that was in The Simpsons. Oh, that was Treehouse of Terror. Oh, that was in The Simpsons. A lot of the Treehouse of Terror. Like, my roommate is really, really into The Simpsons, and we were rewatching some Twilight Zone episodes the other night, and I was like, she was like, oh, that. And I was like, yeah. And I was a Twilight Zone then Simpsons. I never grew up on Simpsons. So last Halloween, I watched a bunch of, I just decided to binge a bunch of the Treehouse of Horrors, and I was just like, oh, Twilight Zone, oh, Twilight Zone, oh, Twilight Zone, oh, Twilight Zone, which is just great. But yeah, Monsters Are Due on Maple Street is pretty damn solid ass story. Again, we all kind of can tell what the morals are and the lessons are there. Eye of the Beholder is one of the most well-recognized episodes out of the entire damn franchise. The shot of the doctor and the nurse with their creepy faces is just used on so much promotional stuff. It's a classic. Like, if you saw it, you know, like, let me pull up Twilight Zone. Let's see here. That's this one. This one right here. Like, this is one of the most iconic Twilight Zone shots out there. And just, it starts with a woman covered in bandages. She's like, oh, I'm so ugly. Oh, and she can't take to this, like, facial surgery. And you only see everybody else in shadows. And all the doctors and nurses are like, oh, she's so hideous to look at. And there's this surgery that everyone has to get that makes pretty much everybody look the same. And it's this society's way of eliminating prejudice by making everybody look the same. They're like, oh, if the surgery doesn't take, you know, you only get like 5 tries or 3 or 5 tries or something like that. If the surgery doesn't take, then we're gonna ship you off to the farm with all the other ugly people. And you're like, wow, she just must look terrible. Oh. And then, I am the grayest blob. Yes, exactly. It's the Fairly Odd Parents episode with the gray blobs. We are the blobbiest and the grayest. So not a D&D reference. Well, you know the old phrase, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, you know. Beauty is relevant to the person who is looking at it, you know. What one person may think is beautiful, another person may think is ugly, you know, so on and so forth. And so at the end of it, your bandages get ripped off and she's gorgeous. Oh, she's like Marilyn Monroe. And then turns out everybody's all looking like that. It's just like totally shocking and iconic. Totally amazing. And I'm sorry, for this time period, this like level of makeup skill is pretty damn good. I mean, these edges are McFucking blended, man. Like, shit's pretty damn good. Like, Twilight Zone had some top-notch makeup work. They really did. Okay. And after that came, hold on, I'm losing control of my mouse here. But yeah, Eye of the Beholder, dope as hell. Lateness of the hour. I have my other notes on my other screen. So, let's see. Okay, so Lateness of the Hour was was one of the more kind of futuristic-y technology episodes. I'm just triple checking my notes here, sorry. I just need to make sure I don't want to start talking about the wrong damn episode. You know what I mean? Like, yep, it's definitely this one. So, Lateness of the Hour is, spoiler alert, is about robots! Kind of like, it's literally, what's a modern day, the best modern day equivalent I can say is, sorry, I was looking at my fan. The best modern day equivalent I can say is Detroit Become Human! Because this one girl, she's the daughter of this amazing inventor who invented all these amazing robots and she's like, they're like tin toys. Yeah, I hate them. Nah, I live in like a dollhouse. And it turns out that she is one of those robots. And it's like, that he built her, you know, for him and his wife because they were unable to have children. And it's just like, you know, what a way to shake you to your core, shake your world. Like, goddamn. That one was pretty interesting. Like, a lot of the times halfway through the episodes, I can kind of sort of guess where the story's going, what the plot twist is going to be. But that's just because I am a jaded viewer watching in 2020, 2021 versus someone who actually saw the episodes come out in like 1959, 1960, 1961, like, versus someone who actually saw this the year it came out. You know, you saw it the year, it's like Jaws. You see it the year it came out and you're like, holy shit! Like, the poltergeist did not scare me as an adult, but I'm sure if I had seen that in theaters, I would have shit my pants. Like, you know, you definitely do have to take into context time period with some of the episodes, but I thought it was definitely interesting, and it's one of the fewer, like, technology robot episodes that I really, really enjoyed. Not really any morals there, but just like ooh, we've got a robots, if there are robots that are just so convincing, who's to say you're not a robot? Who's to say? I'm being silly now because it's 9:13 at night my time. And I am filled with caffeine. So the caffeine buzz is hitting. Y'all ready to ride the Tower of Terror 5 times in a row, kids? That's what I did last time. Lost my fucking mind. That's what I'm gonna do the next time. If I can ever make it to Disney World in 2030, by 2030 I'd like to make it back to Disney World, and I like to ride the Tower of Terror again. And I'm also, as a child, I was very lightweight. Even as an adult, I'd say, especially the last time I went, I was pretty damn lightweight. They don't make those seatbelts adjustable. So if you're a smaller person, your ass is gonna lift off that seat, and it's fucking terrifying, and I love it. That's the best part, when your ass lifts off the feet. You feel like you're just in free fall. So great. But the last episode of season 2 I wanted to mention as my favorites was Penny for Your Thoughts. Now, Penny for Your Thoughts, again, is a bit of a what if, another one of those what if scenarios. A guy flips a penny, and it lands just, well, I've got a coaster, just like this, just like that, instead of on one side. So he ends up being, by having that sheer amount of luck, he ends up for an entire day being able to hear everyone's thoughts. And he ends up like convincing a guy out of robbing the bank that they both work at, and he, falls in love and notices a bright young thing in the office. He ends up saying the right things to his boss, who didn't think that he was really worth anything because he was always too lost in his own thoughts. So, things kind of work out for him, but he feels like towards the end he's like, I'm cursed. I hate that I have to hear every insignificant little thing, because, people are not always honest when they talk. Like, their thoughts are so different, and they're also private. He's like, I feel like I'm intruding upon everybody. I don't like this. At the end of the episode, he finds that penny again, the newsstand. He had like flicked it into a newsstand, and he's like, oh, the guy's like, oh, this is like the luckiest penny ever. Landed like this. I've kept it like this, and it stayed like this all day. So he flicks the penny over, and once the penny falls on one side, he's unable to hear people's thoughts, and he's like so freaking happy about it. This is again another one of them It's a Wonderful Life-esque episodes, and a what if, something that's, in a passing thought we may think is a blessing, being able to know who's going to die next, or being able to read people's thoughts is more of a burden and more of a curse. So it's just, be careful what you wish for, and he didn't even really wish for it, but, just be careful of those sorts of things. Be mindful of consequences in passing thoughts like that. And that's a theme throughout a lot of the Twilight Zone episodes, is be careful of your passing thoughts like that. Be mindful of consequences in your life. Now, Game of Pool. Now we're moving into season 3, season 4. Obviously, at the end, I'm gonna open the floor up to everybody else's favorite episodes. We're just going over some of my favorites very quickly. Game of Pool was another kind of intriguing episode, but he's in. I like the guy who thinks he's in heaven, but he's in hell. Yeah, like great stuff like that. A Game of Pool was about a guy who really loved pool. He was really good at pool. And at that pool hall he went, he was always haunted by the fact that everybody always said, oh, you're good, but you're not as good as Fats. Fats was a guy that had died and was like known as the best pool player ever. And he's late at night playing pool in the bar, and he's like, what I wouldn't give, just play one more game, because I tell you, I could beat him. And he's granted that wish. The ghost of Fats comes in, they play pool together. And at the end of it, he wins, and he's like, I'm the best. I'm the best. And Fats is like, oh, thank you. And he's like, why are you thanking me? I just kicked your ass. Like, I am now officially the best pool player out there. And he goes, well, yeah, that's just it. Because now you get to take my spot. And it was hinging on this concept that if you're the best at something, you then die, and then in the afterlife, and he's left there sitting in a cloud of nothing except for a chair and a pool table, waiting for someone to challenge him and hopefully beat him and take up that mantle. So it's just like, and it's, you know, it's expressed throughout the episode that both he and Fats, you know, gave up a lot of things in life to be the best. They gave up, you know, having a better career and making a lot of money. They gave up finding love. They gave up, you know, just friendships. It was like an obsession, you know. And the end of the episode, the whole point of it really was, you know, it's good to be the best or to be good at something, but don't let it turn into an obsession and overtake your own life, because now when you're at the top and at the best, you now also have to defend that, and that's just like, there's nowhere else to go but down or wait around, and just, it's a little bit empty. It's empty once you make it to the top, because where else is there to go? You know, you've spent your entire life on this goal and obsessing over this thing, and now you've gotten there. You didn't add to anything else in your life. It's pretty damn empty. It's like, that's pretty sad and tragic, but damn, does it hit hard. Like, you know, in all these episodes, every once in a while, Rod Serling does not pull any punches, and I'm just like, damn. I was like, damn, this is what, you know, 60 years later, and that hurts. Like, ouch. Shit still hurts, man. Like, damn. Can you tell I'm at a certain point in my life where these sorts of episodes are hitting hard? Now, the best, arguably the best, one of the best all-time episodes, It's a Good Life. Reference that in talking about the Disney ride. This is the episode that traumatized my father. If you don't know It's a Good Life, for shame. If you're gonna watch one episode of the Twilight Zone, watch It's a Good Life. It was done in the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. They did an episode of that. Go to the cornfield! I wish you away to the cornfield! I feel like I need to get a shirt that says I'm sending you to the cornfield. Everyone will think Children of the Corn. I'm like, nah, It's a Good Life. But this is the episode that traumatized my father as a child, because he probably watched it at like 1 a.m. Exactly. The kid, the actor, plays Will Robinson, Lost in Space. His daughter also became an actress. She plays Lucy in the Santa Claus movies. Ain't that just wild? Ain't that just wild? But yeah, It's a Good Life is a great episode. It's about a kid that who's known as the Monster, who can read people's minds and pretty much just like has godlike powers. Lost his face. Sorry, I blur words together sometimes. When I work on the phone for a living, so sometimes I'll be talking and I'll be like, "Hi, can I get your name and your title for my records?" And they'll go, "My telephone number is," and I'm like, oh my god, am I speaking gibberish? I think I need to turn down this ring light, because I am just overexposed to high hell. Oh my god. Oh, yeah, oh, they came back to in the 80s reboot? Well, I haven't watched the 80s reboot. I guess I will have to watch that episode of the 80s reboot, and now I'm terrified. But yeah, so this kid just cuts off this town, this farming town, from the rural farming town from the rest of the world, just traumatizing everybody. You best think good thoughts. It's a good thing you did that. A real good thing. Not nearly as good, but it's fun. Okay, I mean, I'll still look it up. I knew it was a writer in the 80s. Of course. Of course, George R. R. Martin was a writer in the 80s reboot. Wow. Like, if I turn down the light, then the quality of the video goes down. The frame rate goes down. If I turn up the light, I'm a pale white ghost! I'm pale as fuck and I can't help it. Well, it's okay. We're not. It's fine. The PowerPoint is the star of the show. This PowerPoint that I spent my time working on. But yeah, It's a Good Life. great. It's a good episode. A real good episode. Real fine. It's one of those few episodes where Rod Serling ends it with, there's no morals. Just wanted to introduce you to this kid, to Danny. There's no morals here, which sometimes the episodes where Rod Serling states in the narration that there are no morals are sometimes the most frightening, because it's one of those things that, like, the more you think about it, the scarier it gets, and you're like, oh damn, oh damn, oh damn. Like, that's what I do like about a lot of Twilight Zone episodes, is you're like, oh, that was a good episode, and then you're left there stewing in your own thoughts, thinking about it more and more, and thinking about, oh, what would I do in that situation, and then like, oh, this and that, and it just goes on and on and on, like just a merry-go-round, and it just makes you more and more upset. And that kid, his eyes, the way he just would point, like, freaking wild, man. Let me go through my notes again, because I'm about the next one. But it's, again, one of the most iconic episodes. Oh, this one, Nothing in the Dark, yes. No. Okay, so Nothing in the Dark was another kind of less of a horror, more of a gothic story. It's about an old woman who, she closes herself off from the world in her small apartment, convinced that there's something out there that's gonna kill her. That, like, changes shapes and changes faces, and she finds a wounded man outside her door, and she's young 20-something man, brings him inside, and finds out, oh, I'm the only person who can see him, and this is the thing that I was hiding from. And it turns out the thing that she was hiding from is the Grim Reaper. And he, ends up talking to her very calmly, very smoothly, like, death is not something to run away from and be scared of. Just, I don't know, it was in a time in my life that when I watched this episode, I was like, damn! It's, again, another one of those less scary, more gothic kind of stories that just, you can see hints of Rod Serling almost trying to convince himself that it's okay to age, okay to die. Like, goddamn. It's like a bittersweet ending. Like, you're sad. It's a bit of a downer, but at the same time, like, there's just like a bittersweet happiness to the end of it. It's worth noting just because of the overall vibe of the episode. And I know I'm missing out on episodes that I want to talk about, but, like, I'm at it. There's not much to say about that. It's one of those ones where I'm like, yeah, you should, that's one you should watch rather than me describe. Yeah, Death Ship was moving into season 4. Death Ship was another, like, body duplicate, find your doppelgangers sci-fi episode. I do appreciate stories that are like, find your it's still a good, oh, you popped the episode, thank you. For those of y'all that are new here, I'm gonna drop our community Discord in the links. If you ever want to check out our Discord, thank you, Yoda, for popping in that episode. I will probably watch that after the stream. In my PJs. But yeah, Death Ship's another sci-fi episode. They find an exact duplicate of a bunch of astronauts find an exact duplicate of their ship. Things get freaky. People are people. Like you do. Jezebel was one of the few episodes that starred a woman as the lead character. Hi, Triforce! Hello, welcome! But Jezebel was one of the few episodes that featured a woman as the lead. It's a young girl right before she gets married. Hello, Lily! Hi! Everybody's popping in! Everybody's popping in! It's an episode where a young woman, right before she gets married, she's riding along on her horse because she's rich and she has a horse, and she sees an older woman just screaming at her on another horse and just chases her and is screaming, So she's terrified out of her freaking mind. She rides home. She's like, oh my god, that was so frightening. Everyone's like, oh, you're a little crazy, but okay, it's okay. I am talking about the right episode, right? I'm gonna lose it. I have to check my notes again. I'm gonna lose it if I'm not talking about the right episode. I'm pretty sure it's this one. Oh my god, I'm talking about the wrong episode. Oh, I'm talking about the wrong episode. Whoops! This is what happens when I don't check my notes. I forgot, I think this one was titled 2 or something, but it was same season. But yeah, she, not Jezebel, I'll talk about Jezebel next. Whoops, I swear to god I know Twilight Zone. I swear to god I do. But yeah, she gets, this particular episode that's not named in here, it's in season 4, I believe. Episode 2, season 4. Yeah. And she gets married. Fast forward, 10 years or so. She's bitter. She's aged. She's had a shitty marriage. Life's to shit. She's just like no longer sweet and perfect and innocent. Turns out that the crazy lady that screamed at her on a horse was her future self, that she went on a ride and then she saw her younger self and just started screaming like, don't get married, it will ruin everything. So she gets home and she's like, well, finally figured out who that crazy lady was that terrorized me 20 years ago. Ha, it was me. And she still got married. Whoopsie doodle, talk about the wrong episode. This is what happens when I don't check my notes as I'm going along. Jezebel is kind of just, it's, you know the old story about Jezebel. The Bible story about Jezebel. So they're kind of, they're playing on that, young woman becomes a witch, love potion to get the guy to love her again, just classic story of a female seductress, temptress. Very classic story. And then I don't know why. Oh, I think the one episode I was talking about, what was it? I was looking at it earlier. Oh, it was 2, and yeah, oh no, it was season 2 that was episode 1, season 2. That was the no, it wasn't season 1, episode 2. Episode 2, season 1. I don't know which episode it was that I was talking about the crazy lady yelling at her past self, because honest to God, sometimes I wish I could do some of those things and yell at my past self, be like, you idiot! But then at the same time, I know I wouldn't listen. I'd be like, oh my god, it's a crazy lady. It's a crazy old lady. Oh my god. But yeah, those evil females in Jezebel. Oh, those evil females. I have to check my notes. I'm being super diligent about checking my notes. Like, don't mind me. I have to make sure I'm checking all my notes. So, okay, new exhibit's kind of fun. This one is, there's about a dedicated curator of a murderer's row in a wax museum. Why men are driven to commit mass murder, and, the wax figures, go crazy. And y'all know I don't like mannequins. I'm okay with wax figures, but man, this episode was a little fucky. It's great. Well, a little fucky. I'm embarrassed. I swear to God, if it was season 5, that's the one I'm talking about. No, it's not. Okay, but season 5 is honestly, season 5 is one of my favorites, even though it ended so poorly and they were kind of done with it. Towards the end, they were kind of done with it, but at the same time, season 5 is very iconic and damn worth mentioning, of course. I have a lot more of my favorites out of this one, of course. Season 5, this damn hat, I swear. So the first one to talk about is one of the, again, most iconic episodes. It's the episode with William Shatner in it. It was used in The Simpsons, Treehouse of Horror. It's called Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. It's also the episode that Netflix uses to promote the show. That, like, when you know, does its little preview, it uses this episode. It's, you know, the guy who's who had a just, you know, a breakdown on a plane after going through years of therapy. It gets on another plane to go home, and he sees a gremlin on the plane, fucking with the plane, and of course he's the only one who sees it, because every time he calls someone to see it, ducks away, so he just kind of, you know, he's losing his mind. It's William Shatner, kind of freaking wild. Again, iconic, you know, that this was redone a million times, redone in the 1980 film, The Simpsons used it, it's been used all the time, it's a freaking classic. Love that episode. The Last Night of a Jockey, again, it's kind of, I almost rubbed my eyebrow and I have makeup on my eyebrow. That would have been really bad, and now all I want to do is itch my eyebrow. Excuse me, I'm losing my mind. Who's to say I'm not already living through my own Twilight? Honestly, 2020 was in of itself its own Twilight Zone episode, let's face it. What a timely time to be talking about the Twilight Zone, am I right, kids? Am I right? But so Last Night of a Jockey is about a jockey who is found to be cheating, and he is barred from ever racing again. He's disgraced. And jockeys, as you know, are short, little guys. And I grew up around horse racing, so maybe this episode was just kind of interesting to me because I know so much about horse racing, and I care a lot about horse racing. So it spoke to me a little bit, and this honestly is this episode's ironic considering how Rod Serling was always kind of self-conscious about his own height, you know, being 5'4". For those of you guys who missed the beginning of the stream, Rod Serling was a short man. And so the jockey, through speaking to kind of like his inner voice, who's just, you know, kind of not leading him down a good path, he wishes to be tall, to be the tallest, the biggest, I want to be huge. And he grows and gets tall until he like hits the ceiling, and then he gets a call that says, oh, you can race again. And horse racing had been his entire life, but now that he's got this wish of being tall, he can't race because you know, jockeys, they have to be small, they have to be short, they have to be very lightweight, just part of the sport, you know, so the horse goes faster. It's a little tragic, but, you know, that's just part of it. So, it's again another one of those be careful what you wish for sort of things. Oh, you had to go get some chicken? Is it good chicken? Or you get some chicken nuggies? You got some good chicken nuggies? What eye this classic female seductress? What? Huh? I'm not a classic female seductress. I'm just trying my best as I get overexposed by my ring light. Peace? I don't know what this text means. But yeah, so Living Doll is one that we talked about earlier. It's in that picture that I showed of the little girl with the doll. It's, you know, the precursor to Chucky. The little girl gets this doll called Talking Tina. And the doll's sweet. Oh, what is this classic? What is the classic female seductress? Wait, okay, can you just retype the whole sentence? Because I'm not having a stroke, but like sometimes words get jumbled and I'm very confused. Because now we're talking about dolls that kill people. I'm not scared of dolls. For someone who is terrified of mannequins, I'm not scared of dolls. As someone who owns like over 100 Monster High dolls and like a, you know, couple like 30 Disney dolls and like a bunch of dolls. Gersa classic female. Oh, what? Where? Oh, we're talking about the episode Jespel, season 4. That one. She, you know, creates a love potion to make a guy fall in love with her again. He didn't like her. If only it were that easy, am I right, ladies? Am I right? We didn't go too deep into that one because I fucked up and I did not check my notes and I started talking about a different episode. So we didn't go too deep into that one out of sheer embarrassment. But yeah, Living Doll. So the dad, who's not that great of a dad, the doll says to him, "My name is Talking Tina and I'm going to kill you." So he just goes crazy because the doll is only being murderous to him. And he ends up like getting kind of a tussle. And because of the doll, he falls down the stairs and gets killed. It's very, like, a lot of these episodes I sit here and I go, wow, the special effects on here are freaking amazing. What the hell would they have done if they had the special effects of today? Like, holy crap, imagine it would have been literally Chucky. Okay, short trip from top on that one. Okay. Yeah, it's like, it's the, inspired some, like, doll stories, Afraid of the Dark, Goosebumps. That's, like, kind of why, again, it's worth noting. A lot of the Twilight Zone inspired things that we know of today. Like, you watch it and you go, oh, that's like this modern thing. It's like Groundhog Day. It's like this. It's like that. Da, da, da. So it makes it so great. I mean, it's not like there weren't creepy doll stories prior to this. I mean, there are actual haunted doll cases. Yeah, Amityville's Horror Story, the original story of Annabelle and the Raggedy Ann doll, the story of Robert, which Robert is the one that I'm the most familiar about. I know not a lot of people know about Robert, which is, honest to God, tragic. So we all kind of know the story of Annabelle, the original story. She's behind like 6 inches, she's behind like several inches in layers of plexiglass. We all know that story, but not a lot of people know about the story of Robert. Now, let me just double check here. I want to check the year in comparison to the Twilight Zone. Yeah, Robert the doll. Let me just double check his. There did come out with a movie about him. Let me just see age. I just want to check his age. He's about 120 years old. So he is, yes, I do have a BioShock background. Don't judge me. BioShock is my all-time favorite game. I mean, can you tell that I definitely didn't buy this wig for this costume? I already had it on hand for a reason. Yeah, so the original Robert the Doll. I had never watched the Robert the Doll movie. I only know the original story. So, the original story about Robert the Doll, who preceded this and probably could have very easily inspired this episode of The Twilight Zone. The only reason I know so much about Robert the Doll is because I love Key West. Key West is one of my favorite places on the planet. My family used to go there every year. I really miss it. I was planning on going back. I probably would have gone back this year or next year if coronavirus hadn't happened, so it's one of my happy places. So Robert the Doll currently lives in Key West, and his story is that, forgetting the name of the kid, but some kid, rich family, he's given this doll by former voodoo practicing slave, so to speak, as the stories go. She made this doll, gave it to the kid, had human hair in it, all that, total great jazz. Super great setup. Obviously, I'm sure, like, the voodoo practicing was, like, white people exaggeration. But she makes this doll, gives it to him, and it's made. And so soon, things start happening around the house. Face gets broken. The parents are like, what the fuck, Danny, or whatever the hell the kid's name is. And he's like, oh, no, I didn't do it. Robert did it. And they're like, Robert's a fucking doll. Like, oh, no. So they're thinking that he's just acting up and he's just, like, blaming the doll or whatever because he's a kid. Very classic Child's Play original Chucky films with Andy, just except it was actually Chucky that killed those people and not very classic. And as he grows up, he's very attached to Robert, like creepy attached to this doll, to the point where his wife is like, I don't fucking like that doll. I can't believe I married you. Obviously, times were different, and if this kid was around in 2020, I don't think he would have gotten married. But he did also come from a really rich family, so there would have been some girl that was willing to do it. But so she's like, okay, we're putting Robert in another room. So they put Robert in the top floor of the house. The house is still around. You can actually drive by it and be like, that's the window Robert used to look out of. So they put him in this rocking chair, tippy top attic, just Robert in that room. Leave it there, and at night you would hear footsteps. Just creepy in of itself. And I know I'm not laying it on in a very traditional horror, and then they heard footsteps. I'm not laying it on. I don't have Rod Serling's talent. I'm like, no, we're gonna, this is the way we're telling it. This is the way that we're telling it. But they'd hear the footsteps, and, you know, people would go up, and they'd see footprints in the dust. So it's like, oh, that's pretty damn freaky. So when the owner died, they donated him to the one of the army museum bases that they got there. So this doll now sits behind 6 inches of plexiglass. I never got to see the doll in person because the tours that would run, the one tour on the island that would run where you got to see the doll was like sold out. So we got the knockoff tour that just like drove by his house and pointed at the house and like pointed, oh, that's the building where the doll is in now. So I didn't get to see the actual doll, which I think if we had, my mother would have had a heart attack, because if you just say Robert the doll, the woman is like borderline ready to cry. Like, she is borderline ready to cry, and my dad doesn't help because he'll like make a creepy little like ticking, like skittering sound, like when I'll say Robert the doll, and then he'll chime in with that sound, not helping the case at all. So my poor mother, you cannot bring up Robert the doll around her, because at first she might go, huh? And then he'll make that sound, or I'll say, you know, the doll behind the plexiglass, and then she'll go, oh God. I'm like, the woman, you never freaking met him. But anyway, here I am talking about my mother, sorry. But, so this doll is behind 6 inches of plexiglass. And if you want to take a picture of him or with him, you have to ask before you take the picture, Robert, may I please take a picture of you? Pause. Thank you. You have to ask for permission and thank him. Because if you don't do that, he'll fucking curse you. And it's not like little curses like, oh, I stubbed my toe. It's like you're gonna lose your house. You're gonna lose your job. You're gonna lose your wife. So his display case is stuffed with letters of people apologizing and begging Robert to take away the curse. So, I don't fuck with that kind of shit. Robert is frightening. And now we have Living Doll talking Tina in the Twilight Zone. But yeah, that's just to say that, like, you know, the doll stories have always been around. But it wasn't until we got things like the Twilight Zone and Amityville Horror, you know, The Conjuring, Poltergeist, Chucky, that like the Goosebumps, that the killer doll thing really became a trope. I'd say this is one of the earliest renditions of the killer doll trope, and it still is like, shit, that's creepy. Like when you watch it, you know, today. Short drink of a certain fountain is another one of those don't be afraid of aging sort of episodes. Old guy has a young hot wife, and you know, he's old, so he can't do things with her, and his brother hates this new wife is like, oh, she's just a money grabber. I bet she'll, she's just hanging around to steal your money when you're gone. He's like, oh, but I love her. She's beautiful. And she's like, ew, you're old, but like you're married and you have money. So the brother is the scientist, and he convinces, begrudgingly, the brother allows him to use this medication that makes you grow younger. So he wakes up the next morning, he's 30 again, and she's like, oh my god, you look amazing, suddenly I love you, oh, you're young, and you're rich, and you're hot. I don't know what that voice is, but then he just keeps getting younger, and getting younger, and getting younger, until he's a baby. And the brother who hated her is like, well, guess what, bitch? Now you're a single mom. You wanted a life of freedom and you sucked my brother's money dry, and now you get to pay for it. So it's like a bit of a, don't be afraid of aging, don't be afraid of age, don't be... it's like the original Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Don't be afraid of age. Don't be a money grubbing, greedy asshole. Don't be vain. That sort of shit. It's all classic Twilight Zone Rod Serling story. Black Leather Jackets was kind of a wild sci-fi one. It's about a group of aliens posing as humans come into the world, and they're disguised as humans, trying to essentially just take over the planet. And the reason it's called Black Leather Jackets is that they come in like 1950s greasers, and it's just like such a vibe. I'm like, damn, what a gang. And they come in, and one of them falls in love with a human girl, and he ends up telling her about this, and they're trying to take over the planet, and they're like, oh, we have to stop them because we're in love, and he's like, I have fallen in love with the earth, and I love the earth, and I love you, and obviously that shit doesn't work out. It's just, overall, I loved the vibe of Black Leather Jackets, and just the idea that a gang of 1950s greasers on motorcycles were secretly aliens. I don't know, there was something about it that really struck a chord that I loved. Which one was the guy who called people to spread lies about some guy and ended up shrunked up size? Oh, I remember that one. I know exactly which one you're talking about. It was not on my list, but I know exactly which one you're talking about. I'll pull up after this is over, we'll pull up a full damn list of every single Twilight Zone episode, and we'll just damn talk about it. Last two episodes that I wanted to talk about here. Before I continue with these two, I did miss another episode that I wanted to talk about. I forgot which one it was titled. Yeah, a lot of these, that's what's kind of wild, is a lot of us, like, grew up watching these, saw these episodes in high school and talking about it in ethics classes and in English classes. Because Rod Serling did convert a couple of these stories into short stories or into novels that, then obviously now are in English textbooks. So, like, a lot of these episodes we've seen, and they're just great moral teachings, perfect for schools, too, and also great to enjoy as an adult. But another episode that I didn't list on here, I forgot what the name was and what the exact episode was, but it was about Beavis, whatever the hell his name was, but he worked at a bank and he loved books. He loved to read, and all he wanted to do was read, and liked books more than people. And his wife was a total bitch and wouldn't let him read. Like, she would rip newspapers out of his hand. She just wouldn't let him read. And he's like, I don't know. His boss is like, you can't read on the job. And he's like, what? I'm just sitting here and my wife won't let me read. So he sneaks into the bank vault. It's one of the classic, well-known episodes, teaching in class. He sneaks into the bank vault with a book for lunch one day, and that's when the atomic bomb goes off. And because he was in the bank vault, he is the only person alive. And he's running around, and he finds library, and he's like, oh my god, all the books in the world, I finally have all the time, and he smashes his glasses. He's like, I finally have the time. I finally have the time. And like my dad and I are both like, well, that's stupid because I need glasses to see things far away. So I was like, I wouldn't care if I lost my glasses in that scenario. I'd be more worried about food, but I'd be excited about the books. My dad's like, oh, I could find some glasses at a store. I could fashion my own glasses. I'd be fine. We're both like, that's stupid. But like we get it because my dad and I are both like book people, and you can tell I watch a lot of these episodes. I've watched this show is like really big with my family because I keep telling family stories. But the reason why I bring up this episode is because we watched it in English class. I was a senior in high school, and my teacher, God bless her, like we're friends now. We're friends now, but when I was in high school, she kind of liked to rag on me a little bit because I read so much. Just like little digs here and there, and I was like, Miss is not gonna insert her name. I was like, really? Like, come on, I'm just trying to vibe here. Like she said once to me, oh, I saw that reading. It makes you, soothes you and calms you. You must be the least stressed out person ever because I read so much. And I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, lady, you don't want to know how much anxiety is coursing through my body this very fucking second. Like, just a little dumb, like, why are you shaming me? You're an English teacher and I like to read. This is painful. This is painful. So she showed that episode and she turns it off and then immediately turns to me and goes, this is her worst night. I'm insert my real name's worst nightmare. And I just sat there and I looked her dead in the eye and I went, joke's on you. Because I wore my glasses every single day because I needed to see them. I need to see them to see far away and to like see the board. I just go deadpan, completely deadpan. Joke's on you. I need my glasses to see far away. This would be a miracle. Like, and she did not respond to that. We're friends now. It's okay. We're friends now. I love her to pieces now. Now as an adult, we totally vibe. She has recommended to me some really great novels and books. She's a sweet lady. Just in those like little moments, I was like, why are you shaming me? I'm like, I don't know why you're making people look at me. I'm in high school and I want to die just talking about this. It may not have been senior year. Actually, I think it was sophomore year. I think that was sophomore year? It may have been sophomore year. I don't know. All those years blurred together. I think that was sophomore year. I can't remember. But yeah, that's an episode that traumatized me for social reasons. Rewatching as an adult, I was like, great, here we go again. The last two episodes I want to talk about were Number 12 Looks Like You and The Masks. These are two very visually iconic episodes. I actually really do want to do a cosplay from either of them. I'd love to do a group from The Masks. I would love to do a full 4 or 5 person group of The Masks. And for Number 12 Looks Like You, the way that they designed the maid outfit, because they made it futuristic, I would love to cosplay. What's wild about Number 12 Looks Like You is it takes place in the year 2020, like the year 2000, the early 2000s, like 2020 or something like that. But it's, the 60s version of sci-fi, which is kind of wild. But Number 12 Looks Like You is another plastic surgery episode. Can you see the themes of the ones that I really liked? Where everybody, after they hit a certain age, they have an optional choice of going through the change, which they pick through a catalog of a certain, beautiful faces and beautiful bodies or whatever, and they go through the change, and everybody looks. So Number 12 is one of the options. Number 12 looks just like you. Oh, Number 13 is a very popular number. So it's great because, like, what's really cool about it is you see there's one male actor in it that plays essentially 3 different characters. 1 in a picture frame that they talk about, and 2 in person. And the way that, actually 3, he plays like 2 or 3 characters visually that you see. And I don't like that you guys can, my email's popping up. Y'all don't need to see my shame. And his mannerisms change so subtly in the way that he speaks that even though it's the same actor and the same face, you can tell that they're still different people. Like, I didn't pick up on this until I was rewatching this with my roommate, and she was like, "Oh, he keeps touching his like hand to his mouth a lot," and I go, "Whoa, wait a second, you're right. That's to indicate he's a different character. Like that's his, that's his nervous tick or whatever. Because we all have our nervous ticks, things that." If we're all gray blobs and we're all blobby and gray, like the Fairly Odd Parents episode we brought up earlier, we all have different tics that the ways that our brains are wired that do make us distinguishably different than other people, which was kind of just interesting on a different level, totally completely from the whole point of the episode, but just something that's brought up from a production standpoint, because I can't help but look at movies and TV from a production standpoint as someone who is as a cosplayer who looks a lot at costumes and makeup and hair and things like that. I can't help but notice tiny little things like that. Cheers. Just finished my drink. So that's a good one. It's the best way to describe number 12 Looks Like You is it is a precursor to the Uglies series by Scott Westerfeld. Very popular book series. Scott Westerfeld, if you don't know, is one of my all-time favorite writers. I've read just about everything he's written. He's an Australian writer who actually did recently go through a bout with COVID. He did actually get COVID and survive. Just because I don't know that because I follow him on Twitter. Love you, Scott Westerfeld, if you're ever watching this. I met him actually when I was in middle school, because when I was in middle school, the fourth book of his Uglies series came out called Extras. And he came to my school and he signed my book copies. So I did get to meet him. I always wanted to meet him again as an adult, but sadly the years that I went to BookCon in New York City, those were the years that he did not attend. So I was very tragically never got to meet him again as an adult. I really wish I could have met him again as an adult. But long story short, Uglies is his most well-known franchise. It's not my favorite. It is tragic that I do wish more people read his other books like Afterworlds and the Leviathan trilogy. Afterworlds is an LGBTQ friendly book. It's 2 stories in one. Writer, going through her life trying to publish a book, and then you get to read the book that she's publishing alongside it. And the Leviathan trilogy is alternate universe, World War I, essentially steampunk machines versus fabricated animals. And it's kind of wild. I love it so much. But anyway, Uglies is a book series by Scott Westerfeld, very much like number 12 Looks Like You. You hit a certain age and you go through a surgery that turns you from an ugly into a pretty, and and they find out, plot twist, spoiler, very sorry, this is a spoiler, they find out that this surgery fucks with your brain. It makes you kind of, not ditzy, but like it just fucks with your brain, makes you, very vain and like bubbly and, oh, I only care about superficial things. And that's what happens in number 12 Looks Like You, is that they said to her, oh, it's not mandatory, but they pretty much force her into it, and it changes. She comes out of the surgery and she's like, look, I look just like you. I'm beautiful. So it's the precursor to Uglies. If you do ever want to read more, if you do like the episode Number 12 Looks Like You, check out the Uglies. 4 books in the series by Scott Westerfeld. Also, just if you like to read, you should check out more Scott Westerfeld, period. Again, you should check out I'm going to drop again the link of the Discord, because I do have a book club started in our Discord that is starting in February, and one of the months we are reading, one of the months is the first book of the Leviathan trilogy by Scott Westerfeld. Oh, we got a dab? Okay. Dab. I almost lost my hat there. Dab. Twilight Zone dab. Hell yeah, girls. Redeemed a dab. But yeah. So it's a precursor to that. I'm rubbing off this lipstick everywhere, but like you can't tell. Good queen dad. That's why I put it in the channel rewards points, because why the hell not add dabs? I'm such an old person that I still dab. The last episode I wanted to go over was the masks. That was the picture that I had previously in the slides of the people wearing masks. Whole point of that episode is old rich man is dying, his family comes on Mardi Gras, and they're all just vultures ready to suck up that inheritance as soon as he drops dead. And he makes them all wear masks until midnight, and he goes through, points out all their faults. You know, you're a money grubber, you're a hypochondriac, and just want attention, and you are vain, and you're slovenly, and hate, and don't have any regard for human life. You know, that sort of shit. And at the end of it, they take off the masks, and their faces are morphed to the hideous faces that the masks itself. So now they have to wear for the rest of their lives these disgusting faces that reflect who they are on the inside. It's just, ha! It's just so damn dramatic. I can shoot to it. These are the masks that I'm talking about. These ones right here. Just, the makeup was awesome. The concept was great and haunting. Just overall, A+ episode. You know, classic Twilight Zone morality mixed in with a dash of gothic horror. Delightful. And I know I'm not going through every single episode, but those were just like my personal favorites, and I can, you know, there's plenty of other episodes that are really great that make you go, and then. For example, this picture was from the beginning of In Praise of Pip, which is a season 5 episode about a man who wishes for nostalgia and is remembering, you know, all the good times he had with his son named Pip at a carnival, and he ends up seeing the younger version of his son. And he, you know, he wasn't a great dad, wasn't always there, but he just, like, still cherishes those memories, and he wishes for, you know, those, to relive those memories again. So they go to the carnival together, and they're reliving through all these memories together, and at the very end of it, he finds out that his son is dying on a hospital bed in the war. And this was, post-World War II, this was meant to be the Vietnam War. This was meant to be the Vietnam War. But they don't say outright, oh, this is the Vietnam War we're talking about, you know, Korean War, Vietnam War that we're talking about. There's a war in Asia. We're heavily implying it. And he ends up giving his life so that way to some whatever deity of the Twilight Zone, so that his son can live through what's going on. So then the episode ends with his son grown up in his military uniform at the carnival, reminiscing about how his father used to take him there. Absolutely wild. It's a little sad. That's why it didn't make it to my top list, but it's still interesting. Every time I take a step, my hat falls back and I sad. But yeah, so that's the Twilight Zone. I mean, oh yeah, there's a few with the devil. Which one are we talking about with the devil? Which devil episode? Because the man who screams. All right, let's pull this up. All right, because we've got Google right here. Twilight Zone, the man who screams. Let's see here. Man who screams, or oh, Howling Man. You mean the Howling Man? Howling Man. Here we go. Season 2, episode 5. Yeah, this one, I think I was like in a bit of a blur when I was watching this one, because I was like, wait a second. Yeah, there's some classic, you gotta love the party store horns, gotta love the ears. But thank you so much for joining, Grumps the Gamer. Thank you so much. Have a nice sleep. Happy weekend. Be careful that your dreams don't enter the Twilight Zone. I had to leave that out there. I had to pop that in there. But yeah, Howling Man, seeking refuge from a storm, a trio comes upon a bizarre abbey of monks who have imprisoned a man who begs for his help. They confront the head monk who's told that the man is the devil. Yeah, so very classic. This person's the devil! Oh yeah, this one will mess you up a bit. You got some cheesy looking, you know, makeups and hair, but just absolutely wild. Thank you so much for joining, RJ. So glad you did. Have a good night. Yeah, work on. You'd rather enter the Twilight. Be careful about what you wish for. Maybe that will happen. Maybe you will enter the Twilight Zone instead of work. But good luck at work, my dude. Have a good night. My hat keeps tipping every time I drink, but I know I need to drink water because I have a lot of other liquids in me. I mean, there's so many damn good episodes. Oh boy, the note. Thank you for clipping that. Thank you for clipping that, Yoda. I appreciate it. Let's see. King will not return. I can go through because it's just. Where is everybody was like the very first episode of the Twilight Zone, and this was a classic one. Yeah, there's a lot of tiny people episodes. This is a classic. Guy wakes up unsure of where the hell he is. He's the last man on Earth, which is just a classic trope that you see in so many stories. Guy's the last man on Earth. Going crazy. Turns out he's part of an army experiment. They're wiping his memory and all that shit. I mean, after this, it became very popular. That sort of prompt became very popular. I forgot which episode it was, but there was one episode. Oh, you need to go to bed yourself? All right, I'll finish it up with this final thought. There was one episode I really liked that is a true It's a Wonderful Life, and it was about a bugle player, and he's just hard on his luck. He's an alcoholic. He sells his bugle, which is his life and soul, and he ends up kind of ending up in limbo between life and death, and meets Gabriel, the angel Gabriel, who is also a horn player, of course, and convinces him to find joy in living and go get back his bugle. And it was just a very sweet story. I like the sweet stories as much as I like the horrific ending Twilight Zone episodes. I love the sweet stories. But we'll go ahead, wrap things up a bit. I'll move into the other screen that I have, the intermission screen. But this was really fun for me. I know it is going late. I should probably go to bed myself because I have been up for way too long and my eyeballs hate me. So I'll wrap it up. So thank you guys so much for joining me and indulging me in just having to talk about the Twilight Zone. I love it, from Tower of Terror all the way to, Rod Serling himself. Absolutely love. Yes, please feel free to hit me up in the DMs. Yoda, feel free to hit me up in the DMs. I really love these talking nights where you guys just let me ramble about whatever the hell I want to talk about. So I really, really do appreciate it. I had a lot of fun doing research for this, obviously, because my book is covered in little bookmarks. They're shaped like butterflies. Oh, little bookmarks. Thank you. Our next we're going to do a talking thing once a month. The next month, February, we'll be talking about the Saw franchise, specifically the portrayal of gender in the franchise. Bear with me now. It's interesting. And it's more of a debating one rather than just me talking about the history of something. It's more of me saying, okay, here's a thought. Here is a question that I am asking you. You can even start thinking about it now. Could you consider the Saw movies feminist? Or, could you consider them gender equal? Like, the way that the genders are portrayed? Because we know horror, especially with things like slasher films, are not always the most equal in terms of portraying gender. And I am a woman, so I do have to talk about that. Is Jigsaw an equal opportunity killer in terms of gender? Now, it's one of those questions where, like, well, yeah. But then the more you start thinking about and talking about this, you just fall down this rabbit hole, and that's why I'm going to force you guys all to talk about it with me. So it's going to be more of a debate where there's no right answer, and at the end of it, we get to talk and debate and tally up our points and see, oh, I got 12 points for yes and 5 points for no, or well, I got the vice versa. So we get to talk about, it's going to be more of a talky one rather than me just going, here's the history of the Twilight Zone and here are my favorite episodes. Which, thank you guys again so much for indulging me and letting me talk about this. So yeah, next month we're going to talk about the Saw movies and the Saw franchise in a very specific lens. This was just overall delightful for me to do the research for and to put this together, so I really, really do appreciate that. Our next streams, Sunday, we're going to continue with the last of the crafting streams for Draculaura on 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Next Wednesday, on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we are going to do Resident Evil 5 in a Jill cosplay. Hell yeah! And then that Friday, we are going to be playing The Medium, which is a new game that is coming out on Thursday. So we'll be playing a new game, which I'm sure every other streamer is going to be playing that game, but I don't care. I'm excited about it, so we're playing it together. Yes, Jill is coming back, and I have to wear gloves in that costume, so who knows how well I'll be able to play that game. But we're gonna wear Jill, and we're gonna play the DLC. We're gonna play the DLC for that game. But yeah, so I wanted to just start doing more cosplay streams, just because it feels like a fun thing to do. Yeah, just dress up, put some makeup on, be a little cute. If anybody wants to know the lipstick brand I'm wearing, doesn't look like it's moved. This is Red Hot, which is a lipstick color from Besame. Besame is a really amazing vintage makeup company. They do a lot of Disney partnerships too. They have a really dope Mary Poppins partnership going on right now. So yeah, if you want really good lipstick, Besame. Dope as hell. They're a little on the expensive side, but honest to God, they are worth it. So I hope you guys have a lovely weekend, have a lovely evening, and thank you all so much for joining me and humoring me in this talk. Good night, sleep tight, and be careful when entering the Twilight Zone. Good night, everybody. Bye.